Welcome back. So the South African Communist Party, an alliance partner to the ANC, says it's strongly against a coalition with the DA and the MK party. The party held a press briefing yesterday to comment on the election results and to highlight some of their concerns with the current coalition talks. The organization says its #1 priority is the interests of the working class across the board. So what expectations does the SACP have with the SA's first coalition government? General Secretary Solly Mapaila joins us now for more. Mr. Mapaila, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I find it considerably interesting that the SACP comes out and says the DA is a no-no, the MK party is a no-no, when COSATU's Matthew Parks told the media yesterday that they would not be giving the ANC an ultimatum. Why was it important for you to do this?
Yeah, certainly because it's not an ultimatum, it's a view. We are part and parcel of the alliance. We contest these elections, contest them together all the time. Our views are embedded within the views of the ANC, and we act in the best interest of our society. The DA is partly responsible for the mess that we are in as a country economically. They are supported by capitalist forces that controls the economy, that are responsible for poverty and unemployment and inequality in our society. And therefore, the crisis that we have today in a society, what we call the crisis of social reproduction, of the capitalist reproduction, is a crisis that cannot allow us to turn around the corner and change the situation of the majority of our country, despite many efforts that we have started as government or through government. And therefore, this is an opportunity that whilst the DA worked very hard with international donor funding and organizing other parties and even setting up possible other parties through international connections to displace the ANC from above 50% so that it cannot rule, it wanted to maintain the status quo. Going with the DA will be the maintenance of the status quo in our country, and it will not allow the ANC to now shake off this beholdenness to capital and do things for the people and become beholden exclusively to the people, not to capitalist forces. So for us, the DA, it's a no-no. These are neoliberal forces. They are based on austerity measures, which see government only as if it's an institution to make profit and not an institution to provide services to the people. On the one hand, the MK party represent those state capture forces and elements that are full of mafiadom, criminality, and it's a consequence of what we fought against in the state capture. So all those state capture networks and criminal elements that are embedded in what has certainly become a counter-revolutionary force, albeit participating in a formal election, doesn't shake off the fact that it comes out of this thing by destroying a liberation movement, by dividing a liberation movement, by creating anxiety in society on the basis of its own petty interest. And therefore, both of them are a no-no for us.
All right, but then let's talk about what option you do put on the table. And perhaps before we get into that, I mean, you've raised the issue as the SACP around factionalism and corruption within the ANC for many, many years. In fact, if we actually go back to the local government elections, I think it was in 2016, prior to 2019, when the ANC lost Tshwane, Johannesburg, and what was then the Port Elizabeth metros, you blamed corruption within the ANC at local and national level. These were the words of your deputy chair, Thulas Nxesi. Now you're saying that the ANC lost its majority as a result of the DA working with Western forces to push the ANC to below 50%. How much introspection do you think there needs to be about the role that the SACP played then in encouraging the ANC to clean up house so that it did not get into this position that it's in right now?
Corruption was another part. The capitalist system has always been at the core of all the major alternatives that we had, which were prohibited because of the scaremongering by the DA and others, who basically say, if even some in the ANC, the neoliberal forces inside our own movement, who believe that if you do certain things, for instance, when we try to tackle the land question, and by the way, which is one of the punishment we are receiving, because we dare to touch the land question, we dare to say that people must have access to better health care through national health insurance. And they don't want that. They want special privileges for a minority, supported by their international donors and funders, the so-called investors, who want to control the policy space in our country. And when we are faced with problems, they are nowhere to account to the people. So corruption was another element that we also fought against persistently as the Communist Party. So what we are highlighting is the fact that at the source of our policy problems is the DA and its neoliberal posturates. And therefore, we could not go back. The people have rejected the DA. They have accepted the left spectrum parties, as you can see, whether in the populist orientation, but generally left-oriented parties. They have endorsed public-based interventions, and that's why they rejected all neoliberal parties, including the new ones, parties of the so-called Moonshot Pact or the Charter for South Africa, who were also funded largely by capitalist forces here and abroad, including the CIA-based National Endowment for Democracy. So all of these things are showing why we could not work with this kind of parties. And the ANC must accept being humbled by the people to do right and shake off all these fears that over the years it has been refusing to shake off because of whatever consequences that they've said will face. Yeah.
There's also the question around whether or not you believe that the ANC still listens to the voice of the SACP, right, within that tripartite alliance. I mean, for instance, what if the ANC then does decide to go ahead in this ANC-DA, what you've called the neoliberal force of the Democratic Alliance? If they decide to go ahead with that coalition agreement, do you think that makes the SACP essentially obsolete as a political formation? I mean, at the moment right now, your deputy chair, Thulas Nxesi, may very well not make it back into the National Assembly.
Well, firstly, we cannot dictate to the ANC what to say. We're expressing our view and our own assessment and our possible choices. The ANC will be bearing its own manifesto if it doesn't implement some of these basic ideas. If it goes with the DA, that means the manifesto it has taken to the people will not be implementable. It will not implement the national health insurance. We need that to be implemented as soon as is possible. We need the implementation of the basic income grant as soon as is possible. We need a comprehensive job creation scheme and program as soon as is possible. The DA can't do that. They believe that capital can create jobs, which it has failed to do because capital lives on the army of unemployment people in order to make profit. So any other thing for capitalist forces is profit, is not welfare or well-being of the people. So that is why they may not be a choice at all. But to the extent that we don't have all our people, for instance, ideally, even the ANC itself, we have no less than 6 ministers who are not making this list, who are not yet already in parliament unless some other interventions are made. So it's a consequence of the outcome of elections. We'll debate that and discuss that within the framework of the alliance.
Yeah, you've said that the ANC shouldn't work with the MK party. It seems like the MK party isn't interested in having that conversation anyway, with them, of course, snubbing the ANC in these coalition talks. What do you think is the message from the MK party there?
Well, certainly because their demands are unreasonable. The ANC had opened its arms to engage with any other party, including in this case with the DA. We have already had an alliance secretariat meeting where we discussed the briefings about engagements that are taking place. We also talked to several parties in the spectrum. But in the main, we believe that the parties that are committed to the people, the people's parties, the people-centered organizations, not anti-worker organizations like the DA that has condemned even basic measures to improve the living conditions of the people, like the national minimum wage, for instance. They've threatened to expel and cut the public service in a country where the services are not adequate for our people. So because they live in high towers, they're not where the people are, they're not where the basic services should be given. And the MK party, on the one hand, given its track record, particularly of its leader, wherever the court may decide, Jacob Zuma in this case, who has plunged our country into a deeper crisis. And that's why we came out to fight against him. So we cannot go back there.
Well, one of the proposals is a government of national unity where you've got the president and then, of course, two deputy presidents that perhaps are assigned to some of the parties that they're now given to other parties that are in that coalition. Talk to us about what you imagine the correct formulation of those parties really should be in the coalition government that you want to see moving forward. What is your wish list?
Our ideal situation is that the ANC should set up a minority government with some features of government of national unity, excluding the DA and the MK party. This is extremely important for us. The concept of the government of national unity is such that it shouldn't really be obsessed with a minority concept, but it can look into parties that it can accelerate its own manifesto, working through with them, wherein we can, for instance, have parties that can commit to the framework of these programmatic priorities that we have highlighted in order to roll out legislation as soon as is possible without delay on the basis of lack of numbers. So, for instance, as a basic organization, the EFF, for instance, a strong party in the left spectrum, they can work with, and they can look at few others and implement the manifesto, and not waste time with unending negotiations with parties like the DA, even the MK party that start by saying you don't want to work with the president. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? If you are a party, then don't participate in the political spectrum if you can't engage in this case. If you want to engage with the party, but say, we don't want to speak to so-and-so. So it is in this regard that the ideal will be this minority government with some features of government of national unity. But we think that the government of national unity, this huge magnanimity kind of posture, it's also not good enough, because you then invite parties like the DA to participate in that spectrum. Then you're going to be stuck in the same space and there will be no progress.
Right. Okay. Well, let's leave it there. I suppose we'll find out as the ANC NEC sits today if they have listened at all to the SACP. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Solly Mapaila, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. All right.